Hello, friends. We're live here on Multilingual TV with Javi and friends in Mal-Hablados. This is our fourth show, and today, with my friends, we're discussing leadership for young people. Young people, all of my friends that I've invited today here, we're all millennials. You know, the generation that is counted to be born from the early 80s, 81, 82. I'm a very first breed of millennial until late 90s, mid-late 90s, right? The generation entitled, empowered, the generation that was born to be better than our parents, the generation that in 10 years has been through two major crises that, you know, when we get out of university, lots of us, you're promised the moon, everything, and then suddenly huge crisis comes in, you cannot find a job, you start thriving again. 10 years after the coronavirus crisis happens, and again, right? So we're going to discuss today with my friends, which I'm going to introduce to you right now, leadership for young people, for millennials. I know that behind us now, it's very funny because I was reading the other day that the kids that are being born right now, they're calling them pandemials, right? That's funny, right? But, you know, before the pandemials come, the famous Gen Z, but they're still right now in university. So we are the ones that are considered today the young generation and the ones that are going to be discussing millennials about leadership, right? For that, today in Multilingual TV, you have three of my great industry friends. So I'm going to introduce them to you right now. Hola, Chris. Can you introduce yourself?
If
it's needed.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hristina, head of localization at Skyscanner, based in sunny Barcelona. Of course, we always have to call out the sunny weather in Barcelona here. And I've been at Skyscanner for just over 5 years now, based here in Barcelona, and I'm super happy to be part of this panel today. And as I told Javi, I was loving part of being this because I haven't been in any panel before with Mario and Jeff, so it'd be amazing just to have a conversation together and discuss this topic. So yeah, thanks, Javi.
You're welcome. You're a great friend, Hristina. You're a great friend, and I'm so happy to be your friend and to have you here today. The second person that I'm going to introduce to you guys is my dear friend, Mario Pluzny from Germany. Marito, hola.
Hi, everyone. Javi, Hristina, Jeff. It's a great honor to be here. We were just talking about the weather briefly. I moved to Dublin the last few days, actually. I just moved over and I don't want to talk about the weather. So I will just say, my name is Mario. I work for a company called Tenable. We are based here in Dublin. I just moved over. I relocated. I drove all the way up to Scotland, took the ferry and went into Ireland. And it was quite cool. I've been in the localization industry for just about 3 years now. So fairly new, fairly young. You always call me young, that I'm young, but you know, I think age is relative. So we're here to discuss leadership for young and old. And yeah, it's great to be here, Javi. Thank you.
Thanks to you, hermano. And last but not least, my great friend, the one from all of the friends here that I know for the longest in this industry, Jeff Beatty. And you guys gotta know that it took me, we've been friends for 5 years. It took me 4.5 to be able to pronounce his second name properly. All right, Jeff.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here. It's a hard last name. What can I say? Very few people actually get it right the first time, and I'm just too polite to tell you that you're wrong. So,
man, there's enough trust for you to tell me, Javi, please.
It's not a question of trust. It's a question of modesty. So I'm the senior head of localization at Mozilla, at least for the next week and a half. After which I have another exciting adventure to jump on. I've been in the localization industry for about 13 years, and I've been a number of different things. Like I was a freelance translator for a while. I was a court interpreter. That was interesting. And I have a significant amount of respect for people that do that job. It's hard. But I've also been a localization engineer, scrum master, technical writer, you name it, program manager.
Teacher in university as well.
Teacher,
don't forget that one.
Yep, that too. So yeah, lots of different experience, and I'm thrilled to be here to be able to talk about this.
Nice. Well, friends that are joining us here through the registration on Zoom, friends that are joining us through the YouTube and the LinkedIn Live connections, we're going to start this discussion, right? And as I was telling you before at the very beginning, we are millennials, the generation that is about to get, that is getting to the position of leadership and call it power right now, right? But it's not that easy, right? I was just for my friends here to know. I was just reading before an article, and I noted down 3 things that I want to throw here before we get into a few questions. Because for those who follow us, you know that Mal-Hablados is about a live discussion. So we talk before. We're going to ask 5 questions, and then after that, we select friends from the audience, if there are enough here today on Zoom, and then they will turn on their cameras, their microphones, and they will ask us their questions as well. Okay. So we want this to be a very interactive show. So I'm going to tell you 3 things that I read. Millennials, we have challenged the traditional style of leadership by having different values and expectations from our leaders. All right. I read that. I said, that's key. That's us. That's the definition of us. Here are 3 key skills and things in stuff we look for in leadership: communication, relationship building, and empowering others. I believe that those 3 are also key factors that define the way we lead and the way we live as well, right? And then apparently, and this shocked me, and I want to put it out there as well, if you guys want to comment as well, we are leaders that are way more outspoken, project confidence, and are by definition more natural entrepreneurs. What do you guys think before we get into the questions? Like, Jeff, what do you think about what I just said? What do you think are the 3 values that you have as a leader, as a millennial and young leader?
I mean, I think that it makes sense. We as a generation have grown up in a time where there's a lot of emphasis on equity. And because of that, like all of those values that you've expressed are values of equity, like being able to communicate, being outspoken, being able to represent yourself. I do think that, especially in those last couple of things that you mentioned, there might be a little bit of compensating because we're in a position where we don't, but it's justified. I think because we're in a position where we've had to be more scrappy, possibly, than previous generations. In order to make our way in the world, we have to project a sense of confidence that, like, I know my parents didn't have to. There was so much more opportunity that they had that could just be handed to them. And I find myself in a lot of positions where I've had to just, pull up my pants and try to figure out how to be confident in any given setting. And that's tough. But I think that is definitely something that's unique to our generation.
Yeah, I agree with you. Flexibility, definitely flexibility as well, right? Chris, what do you think about this? Do you want to make any comment on this statement that I said? Yeah, please.
The first thing that you said was like that we perceive different than traditional leadership style, and like immediately in my head was like, what is even a traditional leadership style, right? And then a few things that you called out. One was relationship, and I think, judging by myself, but also different cultures have different countries, different cultures, different ways of communication. But I think the key one is the relationship building. I think we are used to a lot more informal communication, informal relationship. And again, depending on the culture, the company, there is like so much that kind of freedom and fluidity to go talk to a senior leader, depending on their discipline, their role within the company, and being able to establish this connection, this communication with someone that's more senior than you or in a different discipline, and not feeling like they are superior, rather like that kind of equality within the organization. So I think that's kind of expectation that we are all, independent of our roles and seniority, we all can have this communication, this relationship, and you can build that with different leads.
Yeah, thanks for the comment. Mario, is there anything you want to comment about this now, my dear friend?
I really like it. Yeah, I like both takes, and there's so much that I could already dive into. This is fascinating. I think communication, one thing to me was the that was always important, that you communicate with your teams and you communicate well. But now, as digital natives, I think the way we communicate is drastically changed. And, everyone is there's information overload. No one has any time for anything. So it needs to be maybe more asynchronous communication, like, Slack, email, there's all these things popping up, notifications, Instagram. So I think we need to communicate even more efficiently, like really well and clear and concise. And just the way we do that, I think, has changed. I do agree with Hristina that leadership with relationship building, that is absolutely key. The way we interact with different people, the way we form these relationships. And we do them via Zoom. Largely now we do it with a computer screen. So that needs to be addressed. I think that's an important point. Yeah.
The beautiful thing for the audience to realize that, I really like the comment that you guys said here right now, because those values, those principles, we share them interculturally, right? Like if you guys see Hristina, she's Bulgarian, Mario is German, Jeff is American, and I'm Spanish. And we all agree on these things, right? And so I wanted my friends to comment on those things now. And now I'm going to start with some questions that I'm going to ask each of them before we get to the audience to participate as well, right? And here's one. And this question that I'm going to ask the guys today is inspired by Mario. Mario, is a good friend of mine. He participates a lot in also my community, the community that I'm building in Acclaro, the LocLife. And he always, says like, yeah, there's opportunities, there's stuff, but sometimes they don't take me for serious because I'm young, right? We recently had a discussion about discrimination by age, which goes both ways, right? Like when you're old and when you're young, both ways, right? So let me start asking this question to Mario precisely. Okay, Mario, ¿está bien? So yeah. You're a young leader, Mario. In general terms, do you think people take you as a serious leader? Does age influence the opinion of others or others who you report to? What do you think, Mario?
Yeah, we had this panel on ageism, as you know, with LocLife. And I think there is, ageism, especially for young people in Germany. When I did my research, it was actually more prevalent in young than in old people. And I thought there's something about confidence, I think, that Jeff mentioned. There's their perception that when you're young, you have to prove yourself, right? So maybe that's one of those things. So you have to kind of show that you can do the job when you're young, and how are you given these opportunities? Maybe without necessarily the experience, right? So maybe there is something about having this perception, I'm young. Does that mean I can be, am I a worse leader than someone who's older? Not necessarily. I think leadership isn't tied to age. When you work with people, you just if you can add value, then you can be a great leader. So I don't think that being taken seriously necessarily comes with age. It's just the ageism that is observed in society and across companies. I think that is the problem that we need to address. That I'm even perceiving, this sort of ageism, that I'm perceiving that younger age as a slight issue. That's what we need to address as the issue, right? I don't think you can't be a good leader when you're younger. I think you can. It's a fascinating topic, I think, and I want to hear what the other two think.
Jeff, tell us, please, what do you think about this? Do you think that you find difficulties by being young in leading? Do people take it for serious? Do you have had good or positive experience? Share them with us.
So I haven't personally experienced any issues with being young and leading. Although I've noticed my own lack of maturity as I've grown into a leadership position. It was about 6 or 7 years ago that I really became a leader, I feel, and I've learned a ton from that experience. But in terms of other people and the way that other people respect me and respect my opinions, I don't think it's so much to do with my age as it is to do with the level of maturity that I've approached certain topics.
Okay, that's cool.
Certain things. So it's not and regardless of the age, people can mature at different rates, right? People can learn to express themselves at different rates and at different ages. And personally, I found the most obstacles in trying to persuade people over to my side when I've not been able to reflect the maturity required for the subject that and the story I'm telling. So it's less about age, at least in my perspective.
Chris, what do you think? Do you think that, I mean, as a young leader, have you had difficulties, or has you had any trouble getting taken serious?
Lots of things came to mind as I listened to you guys. But I think on one hand, first, we need to call out the difference between a leader, a manager, a line manager. And oftentimes the difference is even how, at least for me, it's how I personally feel. Like I became a line manager, started managing the team. And even today, I don't feel comfortable even saying I'm a leader, right? It's something that almost feels like we need to earn that. And it comes with the experience and with the perception of how others feel about us. That's one thing. But then I was thinking, like, I have never personally felt any sort of discrimination towards me being young or a young leader. And on one hand, I think it's just our culture at Skyscanner. We have a lot of like focus on different types of discrimination and awareness against discrimination, be that age and gender and race. So we do a lot of those workshops and sessions to kind of prevent from people expressing any type of discrimination. But one thing that, even though other people didn't perceive me or didn't have this discrimination towards me, I had it towards myself. Like it was that imposter syndrome literally kicking in. So, until recently, my team was 10 people on the team, and I was leading, managing, line managing the team, whatever word you want to use. And a lot of the people joining the team, they actually had more years of experience in the localization industry than myself. And immediately, as everyone joining, I was thinking, like, what can I help this person? What can I teach, learn of this, about this person that has already much more experience than I do? And I think it's super important when those kind of doubts we feel to just take a step back, take some space and to think. And I realized, what is really the role of a manager? Like, it's not really, right? It's not really to teach about the industry. And of course, it's important for us to know, obviously, the industry in and out, but we can't expect that we'll always know everything. This is why we hire competent, strong people. And I realized the role of a manager, more than the industry skills and knowledge, is to support that person. Like, how can they grow within the company? What can I've been at Skyscanner for 5 years now. So obviously I know a lot about the way we work, about priorities. So kind of bringing that knowledge to my team, to my people. What is important for us at this time within the company? How does the team, this individual fit within this company priorities? Also, what do they need to grow, to learn? What opportunities can I create for them to develop further? And that kind of gave me the confidence that, I don't have as many years experience as them, but yet I can still be helpful. I can still contribute. I can still bring that knowledge and support for them. So I think that's kind of the aspect to look from, like a leadership manager role and the age, really.
I love it. We're going to discuss about styles of leadership and how they have evolved further into the conversation. But also for you guys to know, Hristina is very involved as well in mentoring others. You did this through the Women in Localization or through your own initiative, right? Through your own initiative, right? And how tight is mentoring to leading, and how tight is that to pulling people forward? Because Anna Schlegel also says, like, leading is, she always tells me, like, leading is making others succeed, right? How do you make others succeed when they have more experience than you, right? That's another thing, right? So that's very connected to leadership styles, etc., right? We can discuss this later, right? So thanks for the opinion from everybody here, right? I mean, we kicked off this discussion. It's getting hot, so let's continue with a couple more questions, right? So tied to what we were talking right now, millennials we have other values. We normally, we can be taken serious as leaders as well. But we find difficulties, right? We're starting to lead in a world that was not, or is not prepared as we thought it was going to be, right? So now I'm going to ask my friends to share with us, what do they think about, what are the main difficulties that young leaders face while leading teams? And I'm going to ask Jeff first, since we're going Jeff, Mario, and Hristina. Jeff, por favor, what do you think are the main difficulties that young leaders experience? Give us examples.
Relating back to my own experience. When I began managing my team at Mozilla, I was the youngest member of the team, And so it was a little intimidating for me to be able to begin managing people that were not only from a different generation than me, but just knowing that I was the youngest person in the room. And so I didn't necessarily feel like I didn't have the support of the team. And I didn't feel like my age really factored into it externally, but inside like my own mind and my own imposter syndrome, that was an issue that came up regularly and came to the forefront of my mind. I imagine, though, that that's not dissimilar to the feeling that other people have that are young when they take on leadership roles. Like I've often found myself questioning, is my knowledge even like unique enough to help anybody, or anybody that is older than me? What can I learn? I feel like I should be learning more from these people than I have to be able to impart. And that's also an issue that has transferred over to my mentorship relationships. Like when I was young, and I mean, I'm still young, right? But when I was first coming into the industry,
like I love that one. We will always be young, brother. Don't forget that. Like when we talk to our good common friend Renato, he always says, no, I'm just old in body, and I know he's watching, and with all the love, he says, like, but in mind, I'm super young. We will always be young. That's an example to follow.
Yeah. But when I was new to the industry and I was looking for mentors, I often had this imposter syndrome, feeling like I have nothing to offer these other people that are more experienced and older than me and have this such wisdom that they can impart. And it took me a long time. It took me until I began mentoring people to realize, oh, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't have to have something to offer. That's not what the mentorship relationship is really about. So I think, to sum all of this up, I think most of the obstacles that young leaders face are obstacles from within themselves. They set up those barriers. They create these mountains that they have to climb. I really don't think that, at least in my personal experience, that there's a lot of external pressures. Now, that's just my experience. That could be different for a lot of other people. But those are my thoughts.
Gracias, Jeff. Mario, what do you think that are the main difficulties that young leaders face?
Yeah, I love.
What are the ones that and give us some of the examples that you went through?
I just saw amen in the chat. I can really just agree with that, Jeff. That is touching me, actually. Wow. Similarly to what Jeff said, it is sort of the thing in yourself. We talked about imposter syndrome. Both of you panelists have mentioned that, and I need to tell myself every day that I can do the job. I'm given an opportunity. It's like, I can't do this job. Well, I am doing the job of leading localization with my director at this big company, and I'm the only one doing it. So they rely on me, and I can do it. So when I moved to Tenable, which was recently, beginning of the year, I sought a new opportunity, and I left behind Memrise, and I've been working for Memrise for almost 5 years. So similarly to Chris at Skyscanner, I'd kind of moved along in the company. I don't want to say moved up, because actually it was more lateral. And that's maybe something we can talk about, lateral career movement. And I was leading localization in that sense. I wasn't actually leading or managing people in a direct report sense, but I was the only one doing it. And I was the leader for localization within the company. So that felt like I was doing it. And the difficulty was just, again, imposter syndrome. Can I do it? I'm one of the youngest members of the company. This is my first career step after uni, after getting my master's degree. So what can I bring to the table? And I think it's overcoming those obstacles and saying, actually, I have a wealth of experience that is unique. And I think that's something that we need to do. And I look at your unique experience. As I joined Tenable, I kind of brought some of that doubt with me, and I thought, I got the job, so I can do it, but I am still doubtful that, maybe can I do it to the same degree my director is used to, that other people before me have led this localization program. And, and I thought maybe I can't, but then my manager was very good in encouraging me, saying, well, I chose you because you have a unique experience, and maybe I have something different that other people cannot bring to the table. So it's always that unique element, and overcoming the obstacles, focusing on the positive, and just having the confidence that I can do it, overcoming those things.
I'm loving the comment on the chat box there. Renato is asking what is young, and we were preparing for this talk these days, and I think Hristina asked, what is young? How do we define that young, right? So Chris, do you want to reply to that comment, and you want to also say, like, if you've had any difficulties being taken serious as a leader?
Yeah. What is young? It's a good question. It's a very existential almost question that a lot of people probably ask themselves. Of course, there is the young in terms of age, but also there is the young of a young leader as someone that has recently stepped into a leadership role. And it could be both. It could be that someone is quite young of age and quite young of a leadership role. And what are the challenges? There are actually two things that come to mind, two things as also in terms of two kind of different experiences or situations I've had. One is a bit linked to what Jeff said around challenges are within ourselves. And one thing that I love saying about being a manager as a line manager is, oftentimes in our interactions and our need to support our people, we are almost faced with our own personal challenges, like kind of managing someone reflects back on ourselves and identifying areas where we need to improve, where we need to work on ourselves. And this is one of the things I love so much about being a manager, is that it's a continuous personal self-work. An example for me has been one area that I've struggled a lot in the past and continue working is being able to receive and to give feedback. I grew up in a culture back in Bulgaria where, it's a very kind of obsessed around how we're perceived. So receiving feedback, it's very personal. It does feel very almost like a personal attack on yourself. And of course, being a manager, it's a very important part. A big part of what you do is giving that feedback to others and, helping them. So for me, that was something that I really struggled with when I had to do that at the beginning. And I realized this is something that's through having to do that, I realized it's something I need to work on myself. So kind of having those challenges, you reflect back on yourself, make you think about your own self. And being someone like recent in this role, it means that you haven't experienced that before. So it's harder for you to learn how to manage yourself, how to develop yourself so that you can support others. So that's kind of one area where it's a challenge, right? Obviously, this comes with years of experience and working on yourself and on others. Another challenge I think that young people have or young leaders have is kind of the goal to almost to please everyone, in particular the team. So as I became a manager, we were quite a small team at the very beginning. And of course, as many localization teams, we are under capacity, too many things to do, not enough people to do all of that. So I was very, very conscious protecting the team and not taking too much from the business and not forcing too much workload, which meant I had to push back on a lot of our stakeholders. So it was I felt incredibly stressed. And after the first cycle of feedback that I got, my first cycle as a manager, it was a really, really emotional experience. On one hand, I got feedback from my stakeholders saying that I shouldn't protect so much my team, and I should think more about the stakeholders and their needs. On the other hand, I got feedback from my team saying that I was too stressed, too anxious, and kind of bringing that back on the team. And it was, imagine someone for the first time leading a team, how that position is. And it was really kind of emotional experience thinking I did my best, more than my best. And yet none of the people, the groups of people I'm supposed to support were happy. And luckily back then I had a manager who said, you can never make everyone happy, and just have that in mind. So that, I think that's also critical, trying to please everyone or trying to support or protect as much as your team. And then what's the price to pay for that? So these are challenges that we learn over time.
You said something that thank you, Chris. That's amazing. You said something that I really liked a lot. And I read about it also when I was preparing for one of the panels that I was doing. It's about the learning, how we should always be learning, right? And still nowadays we're still thinking that learning is something that belongs to young people, as if there was an age where you're not supposed to learn anymore, right? Mm-hmm. Why is that? That's completely a case of ageism, right? Why are you taking learning away from people that are older than us, let's say it that way, right? Why, right? So like that continuous thing is amazing. That's very inspiring. I really like it. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. So my friends, we are going to continue to the next question because we have a couple more. And this one, if this one that we just discussed right now was inspired by Mario, this one's inspired by Jeff. Jeff was when we talk very often. He's a very good friend of mine, and we were discussing early in the year about the evolution of our careers, the evolution of the career of who is now a young leader, right? How do we create opportunities? Are other generations that are in front of us blocking us from going in, from getting into roles? Once we have the chance, are we ready? Should we create our own new roles, right? So I want to ask them, I want to ask my friends today about the lack of, for the future, about the lack of those leadership roles, right? What is your plan here? Because, for example, what we were saying, there are a few VP positions, heads of, etc. What do we do then? How can we solve this problem? Jeff, and this one's for you. It was inspired by you. You have to answer this one now first.
So from my personal experience, I can only really speak on the client side of the industry. And I recognize that the two sides, while our goals are always in alignment, we want to get content and applications out to as many people as we can. The vendor side is very different. There are different opportunities and larger opportunities, I think, larger volumes of opportunities, I think, on the vendor side. But on the client side, there's always this constraint of all of the other priorities that the company is trying to pursue, right? I had a really great manager a few years ago, and I had a career development conversation with him where I was saying I'd really like to become a director of localization somewhere. And he said, okay, you've got two paths. And I think that this guy, it was a great manager because he didn't tell me what to do. He said, he laid out two paths for me and said, you get to pick which one to go down. He said that on the one hand, you can continue going the route that you're going. You can become an even stronger domain expert in localization. You can try to expand the presence of localization into more areas of the company. And you can convince or work to convince the executive team that localization is a critical component to the success of the business and the business needs to have a leader at that level to be able to support that critical function of the business. Mm-hmm. Or you can begin diversifying your specializations. You can stop focusing exclusively on localization, and you can become more open and flexible to managing teams that have nothing to do with localization or that only have a peripheral interest in localization, and begin becoming a subject matter expert in those areas and learning the business from those different areas. And he said the first option is difficult to impossible. The second option is fairly easy, and we can find opportunities for you to expand your area of expertise. And I think that for the client side, that's really the challenge that a lot of us leaders have. Some people have been able to do it really effectively. They've been able to convince executive teams that localization is such a core function to their business's success that there needs to be advanced, very senior level leadership roles to support it. But I think that those are the exception to the rule. The rule really is, if you want to advance as a leader, then you need to learn how the business operates, not how to become a better localizer. Sure, mm-hmm. You need to keep your localization skills sharp, but you also need to step out of the way and let someone else lead localization while you go about trying to learn other areas of the business. And so that's kind of that's the challenge for us young leaders, I think. As much as I want to take the same path as others have been able to do successfully and convince executive teams that localization is just so important that you have to have a director or a vice president of localization, I just think that that's far too rare. There's going to be a greater opportunity for success if I expand my knowledge of the business.
Yeah. Gracias.
Wow, this is so fascinating, Jeff. Sorry, I just wanted to jump on that because I know we had several conversations a bit on LinkedIn, a bit around this, like kind of the impact. And it was fascinating to hear your input because I almost feel the exactly opposite to what you just said. I feel like, the two paths, I absolutely agree with the two paths of like becoming more and more senior in the localization space, be that director, VP, we can aim for the most as we can, or just having a leadership role in any discipline. And I almost feel like the easiest path, or the easier of the two, is the growth within the localization space. Like, I feel like it's easier to become a director, a senior director, whatever that is, within your organization, within localization, as opposed to becoming a senior leader with any other field within your organization. And the reason I think that is, being a senior manager, lead already within your organization, within your discipline, you have undoubtedly established yourself as a leader. And it's almost like a matter of bringing even more impact within your organization, within your space, so that you can get that more senior level, right? Like, I assume in most companies, the more impact you bring, the more benefit to the company, the easier it is to get promoted. So almost like finding different ways where you can show the impact, the benefit of localization on a company level and get to that kind of higher level within your stream because you're already on that path. That's hard, but I feel like that's easier than going into a completely different space where you don't have that expertise established or that role established. And I do agree that there are those opportunities, like for me personally, and I think that's the other thing where people need to identify for themselves, what do they want, what they're interested, like are they interested in going all the way to a localization discipline, or are they interested into a more cross-functional? And we recently saw, I really loved a podcast from Minette Norman, I think. She was a director initially of localization and then VP of engineering in Autodesk, I think. And that was an amazing, for me personally, it felt really an inspirational story. Someone from localization going into an engineering of all disciplines and a VP of engineering. So it almost feels even harder to establish yourself as a lead within a discipline that has on the surface nothing to do with localization, and establishing your impact there. I don't think it's impossible, but I just think it's harder. And again, it's more like for yourself as an individual, what do you want to do? So say I personally am more inspired of doing more cross-functional roles. But it was just interesting to see how you told a bit the opposite to what I was thinking. I feel like it's easier within the localization space.
I love it. There's a bit of controversy. No,
it's not so much. I guess it's really personal, right?
Yeah. Mario, what do you think? What can we do?
I don't know. Relax, Javi. Everything will be okay. I don't know which side I agree with more. When I was listening to them, I was like, oh God, what do I agree with more? And
like you have to decide. Like you have to say who's right.
It's black and white. It's either you or Hristina. I think it depends on the company, right? It depends on where you are. The main challenge is figuring out what you want. Really, that is the main challenge. It's, as a millennial, it feels I have a million options, right? And maybe not. I probably couldn't become a VP of engineering at Google, not at this point. I don't know how to code, but I have so many things to choose from. So it's overwhelming to even choose, what do I even want to be? If I want to be VP of localization, can I do it? Probably. If I put my effort into it and all my resources, I can probably do it. So that's the first challenge. And I have a VP of engineering who is my close friend, and we were talking about managing engineers if you don't know engineering. Is that even possible? I was listening to you, Hristina, and I thought, doing something where you lead people who are domain experts in an area and you don't know the area. And to me, it felt, with knowing nothing about engineering, it felt, if you're a people manager, that should be fine. You let them do it and you don't really have to do anything, and you just you support them, right? But then I thought, knowing the domain really well, that probably makes it easier. So it is a little bit of both. Again, I think, Javi, the main question about, there is not many roles available. I think not all of us want to even be a VP of engineering, a head of, and there is other options that we can do. So I think it's working on what you want to do, find out what you're passionate about and what you can do best. It's always in career development is we have to find our purpose and our why. That's one thing, but I guess you have to be good at it to some degree. Otherwise, you won't be successful. And also the lateral movement in our careers was something we talked about a bit before. And actually very relevant today on LinkedIn, I joined the discussion, and it was about going from translator to project manager, program manager, and so on, rather than going sideways, going down, going up. I thought that was so relevant to my own journey. It felt, I was a translator, and I was then in content and research. And in a startup, you do a bit of everything at first, even cleaning dishes and whatever you do. And then all of a sudden you move up, and maybe you move sideways again. And as long as you're happy, I think that's not a problem at all. It's, it's aligned with your values, with your life goals, and you have to be happy with it.
Nobody has mentioned here today the fact of becoming an entrepreneur at some point with all the knowledge we're gaining right now. But that is a different story. Is that maybe, Jeff, related more to those like me that are on the vendor side rather than the client side? Do people on the client side want to go that direction always? Or we want to go on the entrepreneurial side at some point of our lives? I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know that I have a thought on that. I haven't really given that any thought. So maybe somebody else has some thoughts that they can start off with, and then I can build on those later.
Were you asking about interpreting, Javi? Is that, I didn't really get your question.
Why not? I mean, like interpreting. Yeah, one of the discussions that I have with some friends sometimes is how are we, the generation that is starting to be in power, in control, in leading right now as millennials, how are we going to retire? The system is set for our retiring way, as our parents are doing, right? 65, retiring, never touching anything else, right? But are we going to be there? Are we going to be able to have a good level of income at that point? Are we going to be to continue working until another age because there's technology to do that? I don't know. Like, what do you guys think? Like me, I think that it's the solution is that, like, and I think I mentioned it the other day to some friends talking, like the pandemic has taught us that we can work from the bed in a hospital at the end, right? And still make money, right? Things are changing, right? So can we go entrepreneurial? Can we work until later? Are we going to be able to lead until later? I don't know. So many open topics in this thing, right?
I think I understand your question now better. I've always thought that I was going to be working until I was 70, or like 75 or 80 or whenever. I think that retirement is becoming less and less of an option for a lot of people. Especially as like there are socioeconomic implications and the issues that our generation has had to face with economic crashes and everything. I think that creates an interesting challenge. But to your point, turning to entrepreneurship, having a side gig that brings in additional income, that's more necessary now than it's ever been, and it will probably become even more necessary in the future.
Definitely, I think so. Well, the discussion is flowing pretty well. No, I'm enjoying it. I'm liking it. And I have another question for the guys before we pick somebody in the audience to ask their surprise question, right? And this is something that we are seeing constantly, and we're seeing in different people, in different leaders, etc. Right? Styles of leading, right? I always have this conversation with Renata about the shepherd who goes behind their sheep, hitting them or guiding them through the line he wants to go. Or there's always a shepherd that goes in front, making sure that the sheep always follow, right? So let me ask you, friends, what is the style of leadership you like the most? What is the style of leadership that you apply in your case? For example, Mario, what is it? Or which is the one that you like to apply the most, or do you think that has the more future?
Yeah, I had to think of the when you mentioned the shepherd and the sheep. I had to think of wolf, like wolves, how they actually lead by being the alpha wolf is actually the one going behind. If I remember that correctly from watching all the Attenborough documentaries. But yeah, I don't know. I think my leadership style will evolve as I will lead more. Like I said, at the moment there's no in-house team that reports into me in that kind of sense. But I do think as millennials, it needs to be dynamic. It needs to evolve. We need to be flexible. Those are some of the values we talked about already. Empathy, flexibility, because things will always change. I think one constant is change. We've already talked about that a little bit, and it will evolve. Other things that, just in the chat, there were some good comments about openness, a good listener. These are some things that I would want reflected in the leadership style. And at the same time, the generational divide. So, for example, my current manager being, in the industry for many years, and I see things differently, by our experience. We look at things differently. So I have a different view of the world, which means I will probably be a bit different leader at some point. So I think it will evolve, and I just prefer to be open, empathy, openness, respect. These are important values that we all need to have. That's yeah.
Jeff, which is the style that you prefer the most?
So
that you apply, or that you want to?
The metaphor that I always use to describe my leadership style relates back to the theater. So I, in high school, was in a lot of drama productions and things like that. And the leader that I look up to the most within that context is the stage manager or the stage director. They're the ones that are ensuring that the lighting is right and that everybody on the lighting crew knows their cues. They're the ones that are ensuring that all of the props are properly placed in places that the actors can grab them and use them, that the costumes are properly placed so that they can make quick costume changes, that nothing is getting in the way of the actors making their cues on time. That's the kind of leader that I think my style really reflects. I don't need to know how to act, but I can know what an actor needs to be successful and do whatever I need to behind the scenes to be able to enable that actor to be successful on the stage, right? So it's this idea of like kind of backstage leadership where I'm not necessarily telling people what to do, but I'm facilitating their ability to excel and to grow. Another thing that comes to mind with leadership, this is a quote from Walt Whitman, but I only became aware of it because of the Apple TV Plus series Ted Lasso. I don't know if anyone's seen Ted Lasso, but he gives this quote by Walt Whitman that says, "Be curious, not judgmental." And I think that's so important as a leader. It's so important to always be curious and to approach any challenge or to approach any individual on your team with curiosity first, and save any judgment for later. And by judgment, I don't necessarily mean something disparaging, but I also mean like don't come into a conversation assuming you have the answer. If you're curious, you're going to be able to extract the answer from people, rather than you having to come in and dictate what happens. So that's the type of leadership that I respond to. That's the type of leadership I try to emulate. I don't know if that's unique to me or if it's generational necessarily, but that's what I aim for.
Yeah, that's very cool. Is that generational, or is that like depending on your heart, on your values, on your levels of empathy, right? And Chris, what is the style of leadership you respond to the most? This is the last question we're gonna ask, because after, I know there's a friend of mine here who wants to ask a question, so we're gonna give her the mic and the camera, and let's see what she asks. Chris, what is your style of leadership? Tell us.
Yeah. I think one thing to call out is just to remember that as young leaders, a lot of us are just literally thrown into the deep water, and we obviously have no style, no even like awareness and knowledge of what it means to lead. And at least for me personally, like what I took was kind of looking back. Unfortunately, I had lots of bad managers in the past, and looking back at that and like what I don't want to be and what I don't want to behave like and to portray and to act. And obviously, over time, we develop our style. And I think oftentimes it takes a while until we even realize we have a style, and it's usually others that identify that. But I think the biggest, also, both of you guys mentioned that our style evolves over time. Another kind of to lay on top of that is that our style changes, I think, very critical based on our direct reports and our people. Like you might react and behave and approach different individuals within the team, and I certainly do. Like, right, they all have different needs, different challenges, different personality, and those people also kind of reflect and evoke different personalities within you and the need to behave differently with them and to support them in different ways. So I think that's a critical thing, that your style will inevitably change and should change based on those individuals and their needs. But I think the biggest, and obviously everyone talks about vulnerability and honesty and openness, but that is like the most critical thing, especially I think for someone like young, recently starting into like leading, because obviously if you're experienced of years in the industry, it would be hard for you to go and say, you know what, I don't know what I'm doing, right? You have your reputation at stake. You don't want to compromise yourself. But starting as someone, and I have that experience with someone on my team, we started as peers, and then I slowly over time started managing them and the team. And I was absolutely raw and honest, like, this is my first time leading a team and managing, and I don't necessarily know everything, but I want to do the best for you and for the team. So being open and honest about that and saying, my interest is supporting you. So what can I do to support you? I think that's, we do talk about vulnerability a lot, but I think it's really, really critical in feeling that we can be that and be open.
I love it because it really goes along with what I discussed with Anna Schlegel the other day. Leading is just making others succeed. That's all. Making others succeed. I mean, there are ways, there's empathy to use, there's all the stuff, but I really agree. And I really think that making others succeed, using, making people feel comfortable, learn and have a good experience, right? It's key to leadership style, right? If one day I will lead, I will do that. So we are going to introduce a special friend of mine who wants to ask a question, and that is Giovanna. So Giovanna, we're going to give the microphone and the camera to Giovanna. And she has a question. I don't know which question that is. This is a surprise to all of us. So Giovanna, she's going to join us now by turning on her camera and her microphone. Let's see. Yoka, are you here already? Hola, Yoka.
Hello. Hi to everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
I think you have a question for the friends. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Introduce yourself. Ask us a question, please.
Yeah, I'm Giovanna Marovic, and friend of Javi. And yes, first of all, thank you, Javi, for hosting this great panel discussion. And thank you to all of your panelists for inspiring all of us in localization industry. So yes, my question would be, what would you tell to yourself at the beginning of your career? So what would be that advice, or even 2 or 3, that you would give to your younger self at your beginnings, that you needed to learn harder way through your career path?
Nice. It was. I thought we didn't know the level of how hard this question was going to be, but that's fine, right, guys?
Yeah.
Mario, what would you say? What would you reply to Yoka?
Hi, Giovanna. Yeah, great question. It is a hard question, but it's a great question, a very inspiring one. Like almost again, like being young, it's almost like, do I even think about this? I am at the beginning, but at the same time, I've already learned, lots of things. And the main thing that I always say now is patience. We are resilient as millennials. It's almost like, don't try to rush it. Will I be, head of localization at some point? maybe, but if not, that's okay. And if I need to get there, you do it patiently. And sometimes, again, the lateral movement, it's not always clear. It's not always that you're going to be a leader. You're leading a team of 5 people and then 7 and then 12. That's not how it works. So you just need to be patient, do the best you can, trust the process. That's almost like a cliche thing that Javi will be tattooing on his forehead, trust the process. That's kind of one of those, it sounds like a cliche, but it is true. One of those, life quotes. You will get there, be patient, and just, believe in yourself. I think that will be my way of telling my younger self, who's always rushing, never patient, wants to conquer the world, but one step at a time, I think.
Same here.
Go ahead. Chris, what do you think? Yeah,
that was my answer as well, Mario. And it's not even my younger self, it's my current self, because I'm constantly impatient, and I really need to stop and really need to think back and to just reflect. And luckily I have someone on my team that constantly reminds me of the achievements within the team, my own achievements, and just things take time. So just to add then something different to that, because patience is super critical. But I think the other kind of advice I would give myself is not to do that on my own. Like, I kind of feel like as a manager, as a lead, I have the responsibility. I have to do everything. I have to take care of everything, and kind of remember that we are a team for a reason. And there are also other knowledgeable, experienced people on the team or outside the team that can support me and can take some of that responsibility. So not to have to do that on your own and to rely on others, because localization, in the cases where you're a bigger team, it's not a one-man show. You have the whole team to support you. So rely on others for sure.
Mm-hmm. Gracias.
Great.
Jeff,
Thanks.
what do you think?
I think that the advice I'd give myself is find your meditative activity as early as possible. So for me, that's running, or it has become running, and it's incredibly helpful for me to be able to step out of my office to disconnect and go for a run, and then come back with a number of different ideas and things that I thought. It's that whole shower principle, right? Where you do something menial. You do something repetitive to take your mind off of the topics and the challenges and questions at hand. And in the background, your mind continues to solve those problems and come up with ideas while you are performing those tasks. So I would say, like, make time for the menial things, because that's also where creativity and innovation can come in. And managing people, leading people requires a lot of creativity, because people are different and unpredictable and diverse, and you need to be able to apply creativity in different ways to each case.
Can I just add something else to this? I just thought of something, a super critical thing for us in the organization. It's not to take things personally. I still do that after all these years. Obviously we spend, especially on the enterprise side, you spend years of educating your stakeholders, and then someone submits a request a completely different way, and you're like, where all the effort that I put, all this relationship I built, and yet they don't know. And it's just so hard not to take it personally, like, all your effort, all your contribution, and yet they don't care. So I think that's, and again, it's something that I still continue to remind myself after all these years. Don't take things personally. It's not against you or localization. It's just everyone has their own challenges, responsibilities, priorities, and it's just localization is one of their priorities. So I think that's just helps with the soul a bit and the pain.
That's nice.
Feeling.
Yoka,
Perfect. Thank you. Great.
Did you like that? Yeah.
Yes, I liked it very much. Yes, perfect
so
points, and I will actually try to implement them. So I guess it will be a hard way, but yes.
You promise me you'll be more patient?
Definitely.
So thank you.
No, thank you guys. Thank you for your answers, and of course for inspiration you give to all of us.
Thanks to you for being here. So, I mean, we're running out of time, but Nika has said that she wants a question. So why wouldn't you should we also invite her, right? Nika, would you like to ask a question? To ask the friends a question? But you have to turn your microphone and your camera on, otherwise it doesn't work, eh?
Awesome. Thanks, Javi. Yeah, really interesting conversation.
But you have to introduce yourself first. Who is Nika Allahverdi? We don't know who Nika Allahverdi is.
Oh, I have to introduce myself. Yes. Hi, guys and gals. I'm Nika Allahverdi. I'm the CMO of Nimdzi Insights and also at MultiLingual. Super quick background. I finished my BA in linguistics and foreign languages, then got my master's in translation localization management, and then started with Nimdzi and kind of grew as the company grew. So I think for a while, I'm pretty sure I was the youngest one at the company. Now, as we've been growing, our teams have been growing too. So a lot of the topics you guys are talking about, I resonate with. The question I have for you guys is about boundaries. Millennials, we're breaking down boundaries all the time. We're remote, we're close to each other, we're empaths. We resonate with each other. We're communicating with each other at a much quicker rate than ever before. But then we also have the professional stuff going, right? So you're building a team, you're working with other people. Where do you draw the boundaries? Because you want to be friends with your colleagues, you want to relate to them, but at the same time, sometimes you have to make tough calls. So do these boundaries kind of change as your team grows? Is it a difference between a startup and a corporation? Or how do you set those kinds of boundaries?
Yes. So, Chris, do you want to reply first?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question, and lots of food for thought here. There are also, I guess, lots of different ways to look at it, and something that comes to mind is a bit something that I touched on earlier, boundaries between the localization, my team, and stakeholders, and kind of being very clear, what can you as a team commit to do, to achieve, to accomplish based on your capacity and based on the needs of the company. And this is a really hard role and position to be with, because obviously your responsibility is to support the organization, but also to be really strict of how much can you really do before you burn out the team, before you stretch the team. And I think that comes with the years of experience, feeling comfortable saying no, and finding the right kind of reasoning why you can't do that. And sometimes it's just committed to stay behind the team and to fight on behalf of the team, and you don't always win the battles, but that has been my kind of biggest goal, to defend the team, to protect the team, to be on behalf of the team while supporting the organization. That's my point here.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mario, what do you think?
Can I chime in? Yeah, I was going to say I have a couple of thoughts. Thank you. Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts that I love. There's a couple of great quotes in this panel today. You're learning to say no. It's almost those book titles that we want. I really like that one. As I transitioned from a startup to a much bigger company, that was something I felt. It was almost like the maturity. Jeff, you talked about maturity, that you sort of grow more maturely just by being in a bigger company, working with different people, different time zones, more experienced people coming from a startup. So you have to learn, like with experience, you will learn to do that. But at the end of the day, I think you're dealing with people. That's the main thing. And especially right now that we're all at home, these boundaries are naturally kind of the boundaries of seniority, hierarchy. Those are already broken down. So we're more on eye level, like eye to eye, where people are trying to get a job done. And protecting the team, I really like that idea. It's that you're talking about that one. That's really important because you strike that balance between, we're the localization team, we're the only team. We want everyone in the company to use our services. We don't want them to have that centralized approach, while at the same time, we don't want to stretch the team. So it is something that comes with experience, striking the balance and learning from mistakes when we didn't strike the balance and we stretched the team. So it's almost like, it will come with experience, leading by example as well. Like I try to, the people that I work with are external vendors, but they are my project coordinators. And I always try to not be available 24/7 almost, especially with COVID. We're sitting at home. You want to be supportive, but you also want to tell your stakeholders, well, you're asking me something that would require all of us to work on the weekend and, at night. And I don't want to do that. because we're humans and we need to also rest. So it is the work-life balance as well. And it's important to keep all of that into account, I think.
Thanks. So true.
Jeff, and last but not least.
So I see boundary setting as being based on a need and an expectation. And so being clear about your expectations and asking good questions to understand the expectations of other people can help you to be able to define the right boundaries. I don't know that it necessarily changes from size of company to size of company. I've only ever worked at large companies. So I can't necessarily speak to that, but what I can say is that the times when they're mismatching expectations about what my role was in relation to someone else's role, or the service level agreement between my team and someone else's team, that's when there were a lot of conflicts. And so being upfront and being upfront and honest about your expectations and taking the time to understand the expectations of other people and other teams helps to be able to establish those boundaries. Now, when I think about my role as a manager, I became a manager not by being hired from the outside, but I was actually my team's peer, and then I became their manager. And it became really clear really quickly that I should not be invited to the bar after a hard day of work. And that I needed to create a space. I needed to set a boundary and create a space where my team could actually go out and bond without me and complain about me if they were frustrated with me. Whether those complaints or frustrations were something that turned into tangible action, tangible feedback from me, it was another thing. But I needed to set up an artificial kind of barrier to allow my team to be able to have a safe place to complain about how much of an asshole Jeff Beatty is, or whatever else they wanted to complain about, but they didn't want somebody representing the company to be present for. So I think it's about expectations and about being in tune with what your team needs to be able to feel safe and comfortable.
Wow, good answer. I think a common thread that I'm seeing is being also in tune with yourself. Because see, Jeff, you recognized that you needed to create that artificial boundary, right? So, and you didn't take it personally. Hristina, you were also saying sometimes you take things personally, but you want to do the best for your team. So that's a value that you're bringing. So it seems like with leadership, you have to be at the core, kind of in tune with your own values, and then that pervades to the rest of the team. Thank you.
Yep. Well, thanks. Well, thanks everybody. This is the end of this edition of Mal-Hablados. I hope everyone has enjoyed. Guys, do you guys want to do any comments before we say bye? Mario, Chris, Jeff, mis amigos.
Thank you for organizing, Javi. Yeah. There was a lot of good stuff in here. It blew me away almost. That was really good.
Yeah, we need to watch the recording so that we can hear what we all said and take notes and takeaways.
No, thank you so much for organizing this. I've been looking for an opportunity to be able to connect face to face, not in person, I guess, with Hristina and Mario. So thanks for being the facilitator.
Always. And Jeff, you have to promise me that here in MultiLingual TV, you will be playing that guitar that we always see behind you in those webinars, calls, etc. Please give me the exclusivity.
I'll give you the exclusivity. I don't know about everybody else in here. Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks, everybody. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
I don't want to stop it, but I know my mind ain't even close to where my heart is. I should let go, I should be open. My troubled water's deep, yeah, deep like an ocean. Swimming in your ocean, my chest is pounding.